Call the building committee to order. First item, approval of the January 5th building committee minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item, facilities update, Mr. Toddy.
Hello, good evening.
You're no longer public, right?
Pardon me?
You're no longer public.
No, I'm back on the clock.
Okay. Okay.
I'll start my facilities update where I always do with custodial, and we are fully staffed in our custodial department, something we have not been able to say since before COVID. So, yeah. With being fully staffed, we're beginning a review of all of our zones at the elementary level. And there's two ways to approach cleaning a big building. There's zone cleaning, where each person takes full responsibility for one area. And then there's team cleaning, where each person takes responsibility of one aspect of cleaning. Like maybe one person does all the floors, one person does all the desks, one person does all the trash. In Rochester, we use a hybrid method. We use zone cleaning through the school year, and we switch to team cleaning through the breaks. And, we're reviewing all the zones now to make sure that the work is distributed evenly among our full staff, which is great. Grounds, we're up to 75% staff, which is strong. The heavy, wet snow and the not yet frozen ground, although I'm sure it's frozen now, made for some really difficult conditions. We're working to put a new deck on the landscape trailer, which is, just wanted to share that with you because that is a sure sign of spring. We're thinking about landscape equipment at this point in the year, so it's nice to hear that. Maintenance department, we have new cafeteria tables were received at Gonic. You've heard me say before, and you'll hear me say again, raising and lowering cafeteria tables is the #1 cause of custodial injury. When these showed up, my head custodian was so thrilled, showing me that he could raise them with one hand. And that's great. We'll definitely save some people that way. You heard me talk last month about washer and dryer at William Allen School. Well, there it is. It's set in place, it's plumbed, it's vented. We're just waiting for the final startup on the electric, and that machine will be in service in no time at all. We had 2 gas odor issues in the district. I wanted to touch base on School Street School and the middle school. And both had a full response from Rochester Fire Department, Unitil, and my department. Both are safely back in service. I'll talk a little bit more about one of those under the air quality project. There's a tilt skillet at the Spalding High School. This piece of equipment failed. The replacement cost, it was north of $20,000, about $24,000 to replace this piece of equipment. And so we had GKS Service come out and try to repair it, and they gave up. They said, we can't do it, you can't get parts for it anymore. Mr. Letourneau, the other giant of the maintenance department, took this into the shop, took it apart, and found the parts that were no longer available. He recognized it as a thrust bearing, which he was able to pick up somewhere else and find it's the correct part, no longer supplied by the manufacturer, but because we have a mechanical genius on staff, we were able to find the part. And we were able to repair this $24,000 machine for about $1,200. And it's back in service in the kitchen, and it will last many years. So kudos to Mr. Letourneau. Weather watch. So we had 4 weather-related losses recently. You've probably seen one of them, the batting cages at the Spalding High School field collapsed. The CTC sign got damaged by one of our pieces of snow removal equipment. The Kubota front hub failed again. That's an annual failure. That machine, we run it too hard for what it was built for. It fails every year. We're getting real good at fixing it and recognizing when it's going to fit. And we had a softball fence by the high school suffered some damage. So all of those, we're working with contractors and Primex where applicable to get those resolved. And the baseball batting cages will probably end up with some significant improvements in that area. So we're looking forward to seeing what's going to go on there. Air quality improvement project. This is the McClellan School rooftop unit. The picture on the left is them rigging the old equipment off before the sun's up. Picture on the right is them rigging the new equipment into place before the students showed up in the building. That equipment is fully in service right now, and it is providing heat for the multipurpose room at the McClellan School. There are 2 units up there. The second one is scheduled to be replaced during February vacation. So that project is on track, actually probably a little bit ahead of schedule, looking good out there. The Spalding High School project is in full swing. The demo in the attic has been mostly completed. And it really, I'm kicking myself, I didn't take any before pictures, because you walk up there now and you see this cavernous empty space that, if I showed you a picture of it, it wouldn't mean anything, because you don't know what it looked like before. There was tons of steel, fans, bearings, ducts, all 1939 stuff, all that had been abandoned in sections over the year and just left there. We finally got it all out and room for new duct work and a lot of work going on over there. The controls project is ongoing. We're working at Chamberlain and McClellan. One note in the controls project, and this is a really good thing about the new control system, we incorporated what we call a polar day button. This is something I worked with Honeywell for years to try to get their system to do it, and they were just unable to do it. Our control system is really good at doing night setback, like lower all the set points, make the buildings cooler. But what about when it goes to 48 below zero? I don't want to go into night setback. I want a single button where I can make all my schools stay warm for 24, 48 hours at a time. We now have that. And at midnight tonight, all of our schools are going to kick into occupied mode. All the temperatures are going to come up, and they're going to stay occupied mode until Sunday, which is great. That will go a long way to help prevent freeze-ups. So nice piece of the new control system. The middle school secure entrance project, we approved shop drawings yesterday. The materials are being ordered. The plan is to go in there over February break and complete a large amount of the demo, which is going to be saw cutting concrete. We won't have the doors to go back in place, so then we're going to build secure temp walls out of plywood and stud, block off all the demo we did, and wait for April vacation to complete the project, but we're well on track for that project. Leading drinking water, we're slowly picking off the last few outlets. It's getting to the point where it's very slow now because there's so few outlets that we're actually waiting for breaks, vacation days, half days, in order to shut buildings down and do what we have to do. So it's gotten a lot slower. But I did want to show you real quick, if you've ever studied anything ever to do with water chemistry, the thing you always hear in water chemistry, the solution to pollution is dilution. If you have a water problem, what you need is more water. You dilute it and your problem goes away. When we did testing in 2019, this was the sample size. At that time, we were required to test 15 parts per million. Now, this is the sample size, and we're remediating down to 5 parts per million. So if your fixture is where the lead is, by the time you've filled this, you've diluted that a lot. By the time you fill this, you haven't so much. So not only are we remediating to better levels, we're doing a better job of sampling what we have. So we're worlds ahead of where we were in 2019. And that project will, I know I've been talking about it for a long time, it will come to an end before too much longer. Work orders for the period of January 1st through January 31st, we completed 177 work orders. That's up from 90 the previous month. There were created 220 new work orders, which is up from 135 the previous month. Gives us a close ratio of 0.8 to 1, which is up from 0.66 to 1. We now have opened from the January call of work orders 43. Average days from assigned to completed is 3.97, which is way down from 10.96. And I noted this morning when I was putting this together that 50% of the January tickets were categorized as other. And that tells me I've got some work to do in training users on how to classify work orders and maybe to make some more categories available for people to say what their problem is, because half of our work orders shouldn't be other. And that's my homework from this. That's all I have for facilities update.
Thank you, Mr. Tony. Do we have any questions? Oh, my goodness. Go ahead, Paul.
Mr. Toddy,
Sir.
lunch tables, the ones we just got were very nice. Who's got the oldest batch in the district currently, and are they on a schedule to be replaced?
When you look at your budget, you'll see an allotment for next year, and I believe there is, the oldest now, there's 8 tables we were unable to get to this year at McClellan School that we're going to aim to harvest out of there soon.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Matt?
Speaking of tables, it was good to see the blue tabletop set going. The McClellan unit, is that, the replacement, is that result in significant lowering of volume in the multi-purpose room? Because I remember it being kind of loud in there.
Yes, it certainly should. A lot of the volume you heard in that space was exhaust fans that had lousy bearings because there were units pushing air in, and they were just plain old ugly 1890s technology exhaust fans hauling air out. Those old fans have gone away. This new unit is in and out with a heat recovery device between them. So the air that we've heated up and now want to exhaust, before we pump it outside, we're gonna take back as much of the heat as we can to keep it in the space.
Excellent,
So yeah, it should result in some noise reduction as well as significant energy savings
great.
and significant reliability.
The fence on Wakefield Street that was damaged, I noticed, and you mentioned, is that city fence or is that school fence?
I believe that's our fence, we've always maintained it and weeded it. And it's at the intersection between the 6-foot fence along Wakefield and the 4-foot outfield of the softball field, that T intersection is what got hit. It's not a huge amount of damage, I actually already have a price on it, it's about $1,400. So it's below the threshold where I would wanna put it to Primex for insurance recovery, but I am waiting for the police report to see if maybe it was a motor vehicle accident that caused that, and maybe the operator has some insurance that could help us out there.
Thank you.
Dave, do we anticipate that the batting cages will be fixed and operable by the time the baseball season
Well,
starts?
that's a great question. And I've been talking with Coach Gagnon and Director Hebert, and they've involved their boosters in that. And if we want to make improvements, I think the first improvement we want to do is put a concrete pad under it, right? So if we're going to put baseball, they want to get out there before the snow's melted.
Yeah,
I'm not going to pour concrete until the snow's melted and the ground is thawed. So that might present some challenges, and I've been talking to them about it, and the big step now is to kind of quantify. So I have a replacement cost to rebuild in kind of $37,000. We don't want to rebuild in kind. It's part of why it failed, is it has a chain link top that you can't remove. It's a permanent structure, and that's what caused the failure. So the insurance company wants us to put something up that we can take the top down. We want to do that, but the way it works is $37,000 to replace in kind. If I replace in kind and give the insurance company a bill for $37,000, they will give me back $37,000. If I do something different, typically they'll take depreciation. So my $37,000 just became $28,000. And I don't want to suffer that loss because they're telling me they want me to take the top off.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to work through with Primex right now. I want to get improvements, but I want them to pay for it.
okay. No, that's great. I think improvements are needed, so.
And the simple answer to your question is, I don't have a crystal ball, but yeah, I suspect that we will bump into kids wanting to swing bats and concrete not being cured.
Okay,
That's the reality of it.
yeah. All right, thank you.
Anybody else have questions? Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is McClellan Library Space.
So this is just a presentation of some ideas of what we could do with the McClellan Library. And right here you'll see some pictures of the existing space. And as I look at this, I can see, I think, 5 different types of tables, including some worn out, no longer should be in service cafeteria tables that got switched to being library tables. And I can see at least 5 different kinds of seating. I can see kids at the same table with different kinds of seating. So it's just kind of a hodgepodge of whatever we had left over here and there, got stuck into the library over the years. So there's a floor plan of the library/computer lab, and it's this blue area in the middle. So I can come up here and try to point it out to you. There's an L-shaped library here and a computer lab here with a parting wall in the middle. The parting wall was not part of the original construction. It was something that was added when we needed to create a dedicated computer space. We're one-to-one on computers in the school, and a dedicated computer space isn't necessarily what's needed in the space. And the administrators have been talking about unifying the space, and the administrators have worked really hard to come up with some beautiful plans that I think is well worth exploring. And this is one of the ideas of, if we took the parting wall out, we can unify the space and come back with, kind of a unified furniture plan and really beautify the space with a new floor. This is a kind of a conceptual rendering of what the new space would look like. And so this is just a presentation on what we're talking about to do with these dollars. You're going to see dollars in the CIP budget when we get to talking about that. And I think this is a great project and one worth supporting. I can only talk to you about the space. If anybody has any questions programmatically about, library, computer, and what will be done with the space, there are people here that are willing to answer those questions.
Go ahead.
Hi. Should I direct them to you?
You can direct it.
There you go,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, why don't you come up
Walk me
here?
through this if you could, just so I can make sure I understand it. So the stairs that go up to that upper casing, right?
Yes.
There's that weird wall. You want to take that wall all the way out?
We want to keep the wall on the top, so we want the mezz to
Okay.
still have the dedicated space for small group instruction.
Makes
What we
sense?
want to do is knock down the bottom wall to make one learning lab that kids can access.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
So one more if I could.
Yeah.
So the doors that come in off the entry from the main hallway, that would be that side where the like booth setup is, correct?
Mhm.
And going toward the fifth grade wing is that side?
So the booths is actually going towards the cafeteria and
Oh, I got you.
fifth grade.
Okay.
So if I'm over here.
So let me go back up to the floor plan, this is existing, and you
Sorry,
can
I'm
kind
gonna
of,
make you follow me.
no, that's quite all right, this is sometimes what we have to
So
do.
if you're gonna put the booth,
Here is our intermediate wing.
Yes.
Right? And this is where our current tech lab is.
Yep.
This is our primary wing, and this is going down to our cafeteria.
I got you.
So what we're looking to do, there's a wall that goes here.
Yep.
This has a lower roof, this is a higher roof, and we're looking to just take this and unify, knock down that wall and make one large
So where
space.
on that footprint, just so I have an orientation, where would those booths be?
The booths are right here.
I got you.
So the
That's-
concept
okay.
comes from the sandbox in southern New Hampshire, so
Yep.
booths with some technology, so students can work in small groups and
Okay.
present to the little technology that's
Yeah.
there and work together.
Dave, can you go back to the other
Yeah,
model?
you want the, oh, going the wrong way,
Yes, sir.
you want this one.
Yes, I do. I think it's cool.
Is the door where it currently is no longer current in this proposed plan? The door cuts are over there now?
The door is gonna stay in the same spot.
Those two?
Yep, so the door there and then the door over here opposite.
What are those doors up there?
Oh, these, great question. So this is a library office right now, and then this is a small storage closet that actually we use, I believe, for elevator access
So
in
if
there.
I go back to this floor plan,
Yep.
you can see two gray rooms
Yep.
with doors off of the blue.
Oh, that's.
So those
that's
are
space.
part of the space,
Oh,
they're not necessarily part of this project.
I got
And
you.
as far as doors, because there were no structural changes involved in this project, the walls are not structural at all, they were just separating space.
The only question I have for you, Mr. Toddy, specifically is if we're changing the heights of the ceilings, right? We're talking about a lower ceiling and an upper ceiling, correct?
We're not touching the
We're
ceiling.
not touching it, it's gonna give.
I was worried about the sprinklers.
Yeah, it's already there, and,
Got it.
yeah.
Makes sense. Okay. I think it's awesome.
And our goal really with this space is to go with more of an interdisciplinary model, right? So if you think about when the wall was put up, what we were trying to do is to create a space for technology.
Right.
We've moved past that. Technology is who we are. It's embedded in everything. So we want to now take this space and elevate it so that we can do some more creative things and kids can collaborate and really supervise, right? Right now, they get to go to the library once a week and they get to check out a book. This space will be staffed full-time by staff, so kids can come in and check a book whenever they want, right? So we're changing how we do things based on what we need right now and looking forward.
I think it's great.
Go ahead, Paul.
I'm looking forward to the proposal coming forward with some costs. What's your ETA on that, Mr. Toddy?
Well, these are part of a proposed budget, so we would have to approve the fiscal '24 budget. We do have some rough costs right now, and you'll get an idea what those are when you see the $80,000 price tag in the proposed CIP,
Gotcha.
but not until then.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for coming and sharing.
Thank you. It was nice to have a reference point.
Great plan.
And I have to give kudos to these two women who have worked so hard to make that happen, so.
Making my job easier.
Good job.
Looks fantastic. All right.
All right, next item would be civil engineering due diligence services.
So as you know, we're talking about land acquisition, and we've been working with Norway Plains on preliminary stuff, but we're teetering on the edge of where we're gonna, if we acquire land, we're gonna have to hit it hard. A typical clause in a purchase and sale agreement for civil engineering is about 60 days. So if we were to get authorization to sign a purchase and sale agreement, we would then have 60 days to complete our civil engineering due diligence. We'd run into some costs there, and then that engineer would likely get rolled over into any building project that we have. So we thought it best that we go out and collect RFPs, and we've been working with Norway Plains just because they're a local engineer and they're here, and we thought at the time that we'd maybe open it up and see what's available. We had 3 respondents, Tyne Bond, Norway Plains, and Fuss and O'Neill. So simply put, I'm gonna recommend Ty and Bond as the civil engineer to move forward. Norwood Plains did a great job working with us, they always have, but by their own admission in talking to them, they don't have traffic engineers on site. If we are tasked with, we have to do a traffic pattern, they won't be able to do it, they'll have to sub it out. They don't have landscape engineers on staff. We will need to have a landscape engineer, they can't provide that service. They're not sure that they have the manpower to meet our deadlines. They're a great company, and they're a Rochester-based company, and I will continue to use them, and everyone else should continue to use them for all your survey needs. This project at this time is probably a little bit big. Ty and Bond has, of the remaining two, Ty and Bond has by far the most experience with elementary schools in New Hampshire. They have everything except for land surveying in-house. They have hundreds of engineers on staff. They have the horsepower and the experience to get this done. Fuss and O'Neill has experience with elementary schools. None of them are in New Hampshire, with public schools in New Hampshire. And that, for me, I feel either one of them would be capable, but because Ty and Bond has experience with public elementary schools in New Hampshire, and Ty and Bond has an excellent working relationship with our architect. They came extremely highly recommended by Banwell. Banwell couldn't say enough good things about them, so that's my recommendation. I'll leave it at that.
Paul?
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation from Mr. Todd of Ty and Bond as the civil engineer.
Second that.
Second. Any other discussion? Do we know what the cost is gonna be, or?
So these are just, we're just lining up all of the little dominoes that we need to have lined up. So when we get approval, hopefully, to build, all those dominoes are in place and we just start pushing out, and obviously it'll all be approved through the JBC.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm just trying to remember this stuff.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item number 5, budget review.
Look at that. We got numbers over
We
here.
got an updated sheet.
More numbers per minute.
And the numbers are changed.
That is giving.
I
You used to be able to do, you know, touch your tongue and go at your fingers and bring it out.
You can't do that anymore.
People look at you funny if you do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure the adding's correct.
Yeah. So there's two sections here. This is a draft. We'll start with the upper section is bonded CIP, and the first line is district-wide exterior surfaces, EFIS masonry and expansion joint caulking. Primarily what I'm seeing is there's more masonry work at Gonic School that needs to be addressed, and I'm starting to see a lot of the precast concrete at the Spalding High School, especially along the bottom. It's supposed to look like granite base, it's not, it's precast concrete. It's starting to spall and fail, and I want to get out ahead of that before we start to lose some of the architectural significance of that building. So that's, we put $100,000 in to start working on those projects. The next 4 projects we've talked about to some degree, one level or another, and some of these you may want to push off into a 5-year discussion. The first one is the Spalding High School Band and Chorus. You know the floor's failing in there. You know that the walls sit on the floor. We'd have to take out the walls to replace the floor. So as part of Banwell's working at the beginning of our air quality improvement project, reviewing all of our spaces, they brought a couple of projects to 20% drawings for us. One is this band and chorus project. And based on 20% drawings, we got numbers that you're seeing here. So the $1.5 million is to gut the space, the floors and all the walls, put in new flooring, rebuild the walls in the same place. It's new HVAC for this space. The HVAC and band and chorus was not part of the big Spalding ventilation project because we knew that whatever we did there would have to be tied to this project. So that got broken out of that project, reserved for a later time, and now you're seeing it here. The only other change to it is there's some glass block walls on the band side up high that is dated, it's you know, worn, and we'd like to take all of that out and put in some modern windows with some electric curtains so we can actually dim the room if we want to. The way the room's set up now is you've got windows on one side and your TV screen's on the other side, and you have no control over the windows, so the glare on the screens is problematic in the space. The number isn't, again, it's based on 20% drawings, so of the ones that we're going to talk about, I think it's because we're tearing out and replacing in kind for the most part, I think it's the one that's most shovel-ready. If you left this in the budget, we'd be good to go. Spalding High School track, we've talked about this before, the track, the pavement. The track is supposed to be resurfaced every 5 years. That popped up in my calendar, and I called the guy and said, hey, let's resurface the track. And he said, I can't resurface the track. Your underneath has failed. And we're seeing that in some cracks that are telegraphing through the rubber surface. This number is based off of a couple of years ago, I got a quote to replace it of $325,000 to $400,000. So I'm saying, well, now it's about $500,000, but it's not fully vetted, and the number on the fence of $200,000 is good. But if we're going to do a project there and do the track, we should do the fence at the same time. And we talked about maybe lighting on other spots, or maybe improving the snack shack, or maybe making the bathrooms ADA. So these two, I think we can continue to have the discussion. We can leave the dollars in here so we can start the engineering and moving it forward. But I just want you to know I'm not here telling you these are 100% vetted. These are shovel-ready projects ready to go. They're put in here really to get a conversation going. Spalding High Special Ed is another one. I'll show you some drawings when we get to 5-year. Because we were redoing the band and chorus, we thought, well, right below it is special ed. Let's look at that. So again, Banwell looked at it, met with some of the stakeholders, came up with some solutions, made 20% drawings, and we got prices based on that. So our pricing is accurate to a 20% drawing. And that space really needs a lot of new finishes. It's pretty dingy down there. And the kitchen area is cloistered in the middle of the space, so it doesn't allow for adequate ventilation. So a big part of this project is to pull the kitchen and put it on an exterior wall to get, so you can have ventilation. You get a kitchen hood in place and a new kitchen and new services down there. But again, I don't believe that it's 100% vetted, and I think, I guess what I'd like to see is a commitment that we're going to have, this is a special ed space. It's not going to be a meeting space. It's not going to be something else like let's decide what we're going to do with the space and build to it there. Again, number here to get a discussion going. Spalding High School gym locker room renovation. This includes the weight room upstairs. And again, it's 20% drawings. And it's in the weight room. It's clearly something needs to be done. This addresses all the aesthetics in the weight room. It puts some windows out to look out over the bleachers. So if you're standing up in the wrestling/weight room, you can look down into the gym. Aesthetically, it's a wonderful idea. I'm not sure. Beyond that, is it, it's an expensive idea. Is it what we want to do? That's the discussion I want people to start having. But we're at $725,000 for that. Maple Street Magnet School site work safety improvements is some additional money. We have some money in budget to address roadway concerns and parking concerns in there, and the economy changed and we no longer had enough money. This will hopefully get us over the finish line with that project. District-wide roof replacements. There's a few roofs in the district that we want to start replacing. Maple Street's on that list, as well as some others. District-wide library improvements is primarily the McClellan project that we just talked about. I named it district-wide because if there were some savings from the McClellan project, I'd like to be able to put some furniture in some other libraries because we have other needs. And district-wide playground safety is primarily McClellan playground needs to get replaced, and we need to, the way we did the William Allen School playground is we designed to a dollar amount. And we put out an invitation to design to a number that we have, because you can go anywhere with playgrounds. And then we brought it back to the school level and had the kids look at it and decide which ones they liked. I'd like to repeat that same process here, and that's what that funding would allow. So when we take a breath and talk about bonded, and then we can move on to cash. Okay, no kidding, right?
I just have one question for you, Mr. Todd, if I
Sure.
could. Previously, what was our budget carried for the masonry stuff? Was it have we always carried $100,000 for mason repair? If you don't know, it's, next time, just can you bring? I'm just curious if because we know that we just approved the bids for the masons, and that number went up a little bit. So I want to make sure we're following suit, right? If that projected amount of work was covered X, we should probably adjust it to match, right?
I don't want to quote your number off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
Completely fine, but if you could bring that next time?
Sure.
Next month, that would be much appreciated. Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Matt.
Two questions. The McClellan Playground, and principal's here, so you might be able to answer this. I'm curious why there are two playgrounds, one on each side of the building. And is there room to consolidate, is there a need to consolidate?
So we've had a lot of conversations about that, and currently we are using one for more small group, so any kiddos that need a little more practice, it's a nice way to control the environment. Long-term, we are looking at enhancing the playground, the larger playground, and maybe doing something more like an outdoor classroom or more functional space for learning on the other side.
Okay. Thank you. There's another one?
Yeah.
I just want to jump on that. I think there's
Sure.
2 playgrounds at Gonick School.
Yeah.
There's 2 playgrounds at East Rochester School. It's usually the younger kids and the older kids. The kindergarten kind of gets their own area, is how I've always looked at it.
Okay. And my other question is about the Spalding track fence. Is it worth looking while you're doing all that to throw in sound system improvements?
That's my question to you all, like how far I can,
Because
We can do- we
sounds
can-
like this when we're on a football game.
yeah. So I guess I'd be looking for some direction on, how much appetite is there, do we want to, the other thing we can do is the softball press box.
Yeah.
Is a safety hazard, climbing up and down there, that's not, that's a ladder with a pile of shoes at the bottom, it's not great. So there are definitely a lot of areas for improvement, and we could go after all of them. I expect this number would triple if we did that.
I think, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Paul.
I think it's important that taking the number that he's got currently and measuring it against debt service is really gonna give us a barometer of where we can afford to go. So until we have a chance to look at it against debt service at that number, we can prioritize the projects in accordance with Mr. Toggy's outlay. The obvious big thing is the big ticket items, right? Like the band and courtroom, we know that's a problem. Can we do it in chunks? What does it look like? We don't know. So until we have that scalability of what impacts us on the debt service, I think we start with this number, measure first, then come back to the list.
I have
Go ahead, Matt.
one more question. With the band and chorus room, have you been in contact with the teachers? Are they okay with
So
replacing what they have?
When Banwell did their 20% drawings that we'll share out shortly, yes, we met with the majority of the stakeholders. I know special education was not represented at that meeting, which is one of the reasons I'm kind of holding back on special ed area, but we met with music and athletics people and the principal were all part of those meetings.
Okay.
So those stakeholders were represented. It's now you are the stakeholders whose opinion I'm seeking kind of at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Matt.
I just want to remind the committee that if, on the 5-year side, you're looking at a needs study for band and chorus and athletics. Obviously, there's apparently immediate need, but when you guys are looking at spending money, I'd recommend you are looking at down the road to the point that Mr. Lynch said, incremental changes, and but we need a plan in place. You guys are gonna do this.
Okay, so we'll move on to cash CIP. And so historically, cash CIP waivers are in just north of 400,000 to just north of 500,000. Last year, you'll remember, we had a big hit on cash CIP. We had a tax compliant budget. We're asked to reduce it further directly out of cash CIP. So last year's numbers were hit pretty hard. So this year, we're basically looking to get back to levels we were at the past. We have $25,000 for plumbing, HVAC. It says steam traps, which are all going away as the steam system goes away, but that money's largely to get us out of a problem I don't know about yet. You lose a couple of pumps, you lose a piece of equipment, you can go through 25,000 pretty quickly with HVAC stuff. Same with electrical cycle. Playground upgrades, we have some money up above for long-term playground replacements, but playground upgrades, this is the surprise. You saw me bring in a volcano climber that cost almost $9,000 for a piece of plastic. This would probably get us through one surprise failure of a piece of equipment. Fire suppression upgrades is the same thing. We lose a panel somewhere, we're gonna lose occupancy of a building until we get that replaced. District paving, sealing, crack filling, and striping, $150,000. This is primarily the sections of road at the middle school that haven't been done yet. The in-road, and there's some sections of the out-road that are, there's some significant potholes out there, and we would probably approach this the same way we've done paving in the past, is to wait for the city to go out to bid and get their contracts, and then use their unit costs with whoever they've awarded their contract to. Floor cleaning equipment, $85,000, primarily for equipment for the high school, for the floor machines. Painting cycle, interior/exterior. I guess I'll call attention to this line. In the past, we've always kind of had a line for interior and a line for exterior, and it's never made any sense to me whatsoever on why we would get to that granular level of minutia. It's painting, so I've combined them this year. One of the personnel that my department is asking for is a dedicated painter. If we were able to hire a dedicated painter, we would probably use this money to buy materials to keep that person busy. If we weren't able to hire a dedicated painter, this money would be used to hire a painter to go out and buy materials to do our painting. So this money will get spent one way or the other. We'd go a little further if we had our own person spreading the paint. Cafeteria tables, that's 8 tables you heard me talk about earlier for the McClellan School. Food service equipment, this is a line that got zeroed last year. And we did have some losses of equipment. I've got about $35,000 worth of refrigeration that's down at the high school. We're working with a NSLP grant right now to try to get that replaced with federal dollars. But there are serving line, merchandise and coolers offline, and there's no money in budget to kind of go after that. They're able to work around it now, and hopefully we can get it done with a grant. You heard me talk about the tilt skillet is $24,000. In the commercial kitchen world, this $25,000 is probably 1 or 2 pieces of equipment. Sod is kind of a placeholder. You know, we always, before graduation or after graduation, there's some spots on the field we like to beautify and keep that looking good. Building security. These are the cameras, card swipes, door operators, that sort of thing. We've got, there's kind of there's 3 ways to think about all of this electronics. This year we've added a little bit of money in operating budget to take care of the maintenance of this stuff. Most of the cameras and card swipes and all that stuff that we have came in through grants, and we never added any money to take care of it. So now we've added a little money to take care of it, but we also got aging infrastructure that when our old analog cameras fail, they have to be replaced and upgraded to digital cameras. And that's what this line would help with the upgrade to get rid of our analog stuff, which is still out there. I got 4 cameras down at the high school that are old analog stuff. I mean, we'll have them back up tomorrow, but there's a bit of a switch over there involved. Flooring replacement, that's an unforeseen yet. We have all kinds of problems pop up. I'm meeting a flooring guy in Small Wonders tomorrow for a floor that failed suddenly and surprisingly. We've got about 1 million square feet of floor. We're going to find failures. And then the 45 kVA roll-up generator and connections. Last month you heard me talk about my embarrassing and almost utter lack of emergency response plan. Right? It's been, go to the fire department, they'll have generators. Well, the fire department will get generators from FEMA if there's a disaster declared. But if there isn't a disaster declared, the fire department doesn't have any generators to give me. I've borrowed them in the past from water treatment, but they have generators because they got to keep their pumps running. So when they can lend them to me, they can. But if the power's down regionally, they're not going to want to give me their generators because they're going to need them. We have 11 buildings. We have 1 generator, the middle school. Middle school won't freeze up. If we lose power regionally, it's a matter of hours before our buildings are frozen. 1 roll-up generator, I could probably keep 2 buildings from freezing. Plug it in at one place, let it run for a few hours, move it somewhere else, let it run for a few hours, and move it back to the first place. It's not a great plan, but it's a start. It's moving us in the right direction. And for a $60,000 price tag, I think it would be a sound investment. It's an insurance policy. Hopefully we buy it, it sits in the barn, and I never even push the start button. But it's an insurance policy.
I don't like that insurance policy. I'm going to ask for you to be a little more granular on that line specifically, just so we understand, because I think that's something we have to pay attention to. Generator versus connectors, the last time we spoke, a lot of the schools don't have connectors, and that was gonna be a big part of the price tag.
So it's not a big part. The generator, this is a roll-up generator, it's on a trailer.
Yep.
It's 45 kV, we'll hook it up, we'll pull it up to the school. Some of our schools, when we did, well, you'll remember the tech center, we removed a generator
Yep.
from service and we put in an umbilical so we could just plug into it. We have that same setup at East Rochester. I could roll up a generator and just plug it in, throw a couple switches on in business. Chamberlain recently, where we had the problem, we don't have an umbilical. So to get a generator connected, I have to have an electrician go out and evaluate the panel, decide what connections they want to make, and where they're going to make them, and how we're going to get that done. So some of this money, and it's just to make up some cables that I can have for a set of cables at, say, my big elementary schools, you know, Gonick, Chamberlain, McClellan, these should be all set, but just to have cables set up, ready to go. So our engineer, our electrician of record already knows the drill. They've already looked at it, they've already made the cable. So when I say, here's my generator, I need power here, here, or here, they can just go hook it up. It's not quite as convenient as the umbilical, but it's less costly, and it's effective.
Okay. I think, if I may.
Go ahead.
I think prospectively, I think what you're doing is the right things. We've talked about it several times. We've had insurance claims where buildings froze and water, we've seen it. So we know it happens, right? It's a tangible we have to account for. I think having 2 generators after you get the umbilicals might be something I want to look at. That's why I was hoping we can have a breakdown. Like, this is what the generator cost is, this is what it's going to cost to make the cords.
Sure.
I don't need it right now, but as we're moving forward, I'd like to see if we can afford to give you 2 if we could.
And it's easy, I already have a number on the generator. What I'm hesitating is, I've stood before this committee and this board too many times in the past year to say, well, I got a price last month, and this month, guess what?
Yeah,
It's
no,
just,
that's fair.
right?
That's
So, I can give you a price next time we talk,
Yeah, yeah.
for 2 generators and what the generators cost and what I think the wiring will cost, and
That's what I'm looking for.
hopefully if the wiring, you know, if the cost of generators goes up, the wiring dollars can act as a buffer towards that.
I got you.
And then maybe some of these electric dollars can go to that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Go ahead, Matt.
On the robotic floor cleaning machine, is that like a commercial grade Roomba? Or no?
So it's a ride-on, it's a regular ride-on floor machine.
To sit on it.
And the next, you sit on it and drive it, but the next generation of these machines is they also have autonomous operating software built into them. And this machine would have both. It would be, you can get on it and drive it, and you can also turn on the autonomous piece. So I would think mostly when people weren't in the building, but the software is such that if it's driving down the hall and somebody touches it, it just shuts off hard. It stops moving, it shuts off, and it won't restart until you give it the code, until somebody who knows what they're doing comes and talks to said machine.
Yeah, because I'm sure someone would jump on that during the day.
That's why we don't let you in the building.
I would. The only reason I ask is if there is an ability after hours for it to be done, is there any impact to staffing based off of that? Doesn't need an answer tonight, but just something to consider.
Sure.
This is more for us at the board level. I think unfortunately with the impact to the cash budget last year, Mr. Toddy's in a deficit. I think we should, if we can, look at possibly increasing it by 10%. That doesn't cover the damage he lost last year, but a little bit can help fill that hole. When you look at the grand scheme of this, you're going from 4 to 6 to just over 5. It makes sense to me to give a little extra if we're playing catch-up, right? We robbed Peter to pay Paul, but if you notice, the district didn't change, right? Him and his staff worked very hard
Right.
to use the very little we give them. So just for consideration, as we work further down the budget, I'd like to see that increase by 10%. You know, an additional table or whatever it is, right? Just so that we have that stuff, because he's been playing catch-up for
Yep.
years. So just something to consider.
Any other questions or comments about the budget? Are we going to set up a meeting to go over details of the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably do that next month and go through like line by line. So what we did the other day was the overview. We have an updated overview tonight. And then we wanted each committee to have time to really look through their lines
Right.
so that we can come back and you can look at particular lines that maybe increase and ask Mr. Toddy specific questions about those.
Great. Okay, perfect, thank you. 5-year plan. At the end of the month. Any public comment for the building committee? Anything under other? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.